Hello and welcome to Nithrania Game Club. My name is Alubari and you're watching Game in a Nutshell, the series of videos designed to teach how to play various board games. Today we're going to learn how to play Alubari. Designed by Tony Boydell and published by Studio H, Tony Boydell also designed Snowdonia, and if you know Snowdonia, Alubari will feel very similarly. That's because Alubari is like an evolution of Snowdonia, and here is how it plays. Alubari is the name of the tea estate in Himalayan area. In Alubari game, players have two main goals. First, to build up their tea estates, and second, to help build up this Himalayan railway together with these cities. To do that, players will use their workers to perform various actions depicted on these action cards, and players will first need to clear up this rubble from the tea estates to build up their own tea plantations, and they will get the resources to build up this Himalayan railway step by step, and also to build up these cities by building stations in the cities. In addition to that, players can gain these contract cards which give them powerful one-time bonuses, but also powerful endgame scoring opportunities. First, set up these action areas based on the number of players in the game. The areas on the board are pre-printed for a 3-player game. For any other player count, place the corresponding action cards on top of each space where necessary. So this is how it looks like for a 4-player game. Keep this extra card nearby, it may be needed in the game. These cards are tea estate cards. Shuffle them and place them onto these spaces, again keeping in mind the number of players in the game. As these cards are double-sided, not only choose the cards randomly, choose the side of the card at random as well. For a first game, leave this Alubari tea estate uncovered, but in the future games you can also cover this space randomly if you wish so. Then place rubble cubes on each space based on the number next to the shovel. These large discs count as 5 pieces of rubble. These cards are contract cards. Shuffle them and place them face down onto this spot on the game board. Then reveal the first 2 cards and place them to these spots. Then look at the weather symbol on the next card on top of the deck and place the corresponding weather marker to this spot. Then reveal that card and look at the next symbol on the next card. Again, place the corresponding weather marker on this spot. Then shuffle these equipment cards, randomly choose 7 of them and place them next to the game board. If the equipment card has this symbol, comes with chai, place this green chai cube on that equipment card. Then place these 2 fog markers on the game board, these 3 work rate markers to these starting dark green spaces. Then take this supply bag and fill it with these resource markers as per the table in the rulebook. Then randomly draw 12 cubes from the bag and place them on the corresponding spaces in the stockyard. Now, based on this small table in the rulebook, add the event cubes to the supply bag. And finally, if you play a 4-player game, cover up this space on the chai track with this blockage tile. If you play a 3-player game, cover up the next space as well. And if you play a 2-player game, cover up this station space in a Darjeeling city as well. Then each player chooses a color, takes all the 20 ownership markers of that color plus 3 workers, and take one of those workers and place it onto this tea house space on the game board. Also, each player places one of his ownership markers on the starting space of this chai track. The game of Alubari is played in series of rounds. Each round has 5 phases. First 3 of them are purely administration phases. In the first one, you restock these contracts. In the second one, you adjust weather and the work rate. And in the third one, you restock the stockyard and resolve any events. Then the real game takes place in the 4th and 5th phase. In the 4th phase, players will place workers on these action cards, and in the 5th phase, they will resolve these actions. Since the first 3 administration phases are skipped for the first round, I will now skip directly to the 4th phase. In the 4th phase of the round, starting with the first player and then going clockwise, Each player places one worker onto any empty space in the action areas. Players don't have to follow these numerical orders, they can place workers onto any empty space. Continue placing workers until all players have placed all of their workers. If you have at least one of these equipment cards, you can pay 1 chai to get a temporary worker for the round. You spend chai by moving your marker one space down on this chai track, and then you can get this temporary worker for 1 round. That means for the current round you will have 1 more worker to place on the action spaces. In the 5th phase, players will resolve their actions in these action areas, starting with the area A, followed by B, and so on. In each area, players will resolve their actions in the numerical order. Taking the action is mandatory, and you have to take actions with all of your workers. You cannot forfeit any of the actions. When you take an action with your worker, you can spend chai to boost up your action. Each chai spent only applies to 1 worker. If you want to boost up the action for the second worker as well, you have to pay the chai again. In addition, you can only spend maximum 1 chai per 1 worker. Then, before resolving each area, all players may use any of the unused contract cards associated with that action area. Players can do it even if they have no workers in that area, or even if there would be absolutely no workers in that area. When you decide to use the contract card, turn it 90 degrees to show that it has been used, because each card can only be used once per game. Then the effect on the card is valid until the end of the round. Even if you use the one-time effect of the card, the endgame scoring will still apply at the end of the game. When you take this stockyard action, take up to 3 cubes from the stockyard, but as these 3 icons indicate, you can only take maximum 1 chai. When you take iron and stone, place them into your personal supply, but when you take chai, remove that cube from the game and move your marker on this chai track 1 space up. You can never exceed the maximum number for the current player count. If you have placed your worker on the last space of this stockyard action area, in addition to taking the stockyard action, you also take this first player token and you become the first player immediately. When you perform this stockyard action with your worker, you can spend 1 chai to gain 2 additional resources. Again, only one of them can be chai. When you take the excavation action, you take these rubble cubes according to the current work rate for the excavation. So in this example, you would take 4 rubble cubes. However, this number can be further modified by card effects. When you spend chai, you can increase your current work rate by 3. Always start removing the cubes from the leftmost space on the game board and place them into your personal supply. If you remove the last cube from the space, take one of your ownership markers and place it onto that space. You have established your tea plantation, which will score you this number of points at the end of the game and will provide you with tea leaves during harvest. It is possible to clear up more than 1 space with 1 action, and in that case, place ownership markers on all of these spaces. When the last rubble is removed from the tea estates, take this additional action space card with this B symbol crossed out, and because the excavation action is no longer needed, replace the B action area with this special card. It introduces another build action into the game. When you take this foundry action, you can take 3 mini actions. You can take any combination of those. You can exchange 3 iron for 1 steel, put those 3 iron cubes back into the supply bag, and take 1 steel into your personal supply. Or you can spend 2 rubble cubes and get 1 stone, and you can take the stone either from the stockyard or from the supply bag. And the third option is to spend 1 stone, which you need to return back to the supply bag, and take 2 rubble cubes from the general supply. If you spend a chai during this action, you have unlimited number of these mini actions, and in addition, you don't have to pay 3 iron to get a steel, you only need 2 iron cubes to get a steel. When you take this action, you may lay track, you may build the railway. First, you need to pay steel from your personal reserve, and you need to spend the amount of steel equal to the current work rate plus any modifiers. If you wouldn't have enough, spend as much as you can. When you spend 1 chai, you increase that work rate by 2. Remember, for 1 chai, you can only increase that rate for 1 worker. For each steel you spend, you may place one of your ownership markers on the next available space on the railway. You start building the railway here and then continue along the track. Each space can only contain 1 ownership marker, so when this river space has been built, the next available space is this one. When other players continue building the railway, they continue placing their ownership marker on the next available free space. So the players build the railway together. When you successfully build the river space, take 1 chai immediately. When you take the build action, you have 2 options. You can either build the equipment or you can build a station. When you decide to build equipment, choose one of the cards available and pay the cost indicated in the top left corner. So it's either 2 steel, 1 steel or 3 chai. Then take the selected card and place it into your player area. If it comes with the chai cube, remove that cube from the game immediately and move 1 space on the chai track. All equipment cards provide a bonus for the player, then a victory points at the end of the game, and also the ability to hire a temporary worker for the round. There is no limit to the number of equipment cards you can have. When you decide to build station, you can build the station in the cities. At the start of the game, you can only build stations in the Siliguri town. Then these spaces represent rivers. If those spaces get built, you can imagine as if someone built a bridge there. That means that in addition to building stations in the initial city, you can also cross the river and build stations in all the cities before the next river space. If someone builds a bridge in this space, you can start building stations in this city and this city as well. In order to build a station, you need to pay the resources, and you pay stone and iron back into the supply bag, then place your marker on that space and gain the benefits. As you can see, because the river space has been already built, you can build stations in the city even though there is no railway track in the city yet. As a bonus in this action area, if you pay 1 chai, you can perform 1 additional build action. When you take this post office action, you can take 1 contract card. You can choose any of these 3 face-up cards and place it into your player area. Place it vertically, because when you place it horizontally, that indicates that the contract has been already used. So until you use it, keep it vertically. When you're done with your action, do not replace the empty space yet. Other players have fewer choices. When you perform this action, then as a bonus you can pay 1 chai and then discard all the cards in the supply, place them face down to this discard area and draw 3 new cards. In case the draw pile gets depleted, reshuffle the discard pile. When you take the last action, the chai wala action, again you have 2 options. You can either take the tea leaves or you can convert the tea leaves into chai. When you decide to take the tea leaves, take the number of tea leaves equal to the current work rate. If the work rate marker is on this space, you will get no tea leaves. When you convert tea leaves into chai, convert them into 1-to-1 ratio, so take as many tea leaves as you want and convert them into chai. Mark that conversion on the chai track, but beware, you cannot get higher than the maximum limit for the current player count. As you can see, the chai wala action doesn't have any bonus. At the end of the round, if you haven't already done so, return your 2 workers back to your personal supply. If you use the temporary worker, return that worker back to the tea house. Now, when this last space on the railway track has been built, and it's this space, it's not Darjeeling space, because Darjeeling doesn't have this lay track symbol, the game would end. In addition, only in a two-player game, when one of the players used all of their ownership markers, the second player will play one more round alone and then the game will be over. If the game hasn't ended yet, start a new round with the first 3 administration phases. In the first phase, restock these contract cards. If there is a card in this space, discard it face down to this discard pile. Then slide all other cards up and refill the empty spaces with the cards from the draw deck. Again, if the draw deck gets depleted, reshuffle the discard pile. In the second phase, adjust weather and the work rate markers. First, remove the weather marker from this space. Then, if necessary, return these 2 fog markers to these spaces. Then slide the other discs 1 space down, and the bottom disc determines the weather for the next round. Adjust the work rate markers immediately, so in this case the crop harvest marker should move 1 space to the left, and because we have a foggy weather, this and this marker goes to the B and D action area. They cover the last spaces in both action areas, and these spaces become unavailable for the next round. Now look at the symbol on the contract card in the draw deck and place the corresponding weather marker to this spot. In case of a sunny weather, increase the excavation work rate by 2 and the lay track work rate by 1. On the other hand, in case of a rainy weather, decrease the excavation and lay track work rates by 1 and the crop harvest rate is increased by 1. If any of these markers are already in the leftmost space and you would need to reduce that value, ignore that instruction. You can also ignore the instruction to increase the lay track work rate if the marker is already in the rightmost position. However, if the excavation work rate or the crop harvest work rate are already in their rightmost positions and they would have to increase the position by 1 again, keep the marker where it is and perform the harvest immediately. When you perform harvest, for each marker on these tea estates, each player will get number of tea leaves equal to the number of current crop harvest work rate. If the marker would be in this position, round down the final result. This token stands for 1 tea leaf, this one stands for 5 tea leaves. So with a crop harvest work rate of 2, the green player would receive 6 tea leaves. Then reset the crop harvest marker back to the starting position. Then in the third phase, restock the stockyard. Draw cubes from the supply bag, and you have to draw a number of cubes based on the player count. So in our 4-player game, we would have to draw 12 cubes. Place the cubes into corresponding spaces, and if you draw any white cubes, any event cubes, you have to resolve these events. When you resolve events, place the cube one by one and resolve the first event completely before you resolve the second event. When you resolve the first event, remove all the rubble cubes from the next 2 tea estate spaces. When you do, place these white neutral ownership markers on those spaces. When you resolve the second event, simply increase the work rate for the crop harvest by 2. Similarly, when you resolve the third event, lay down number of railway tracks equal to the current work rate. So in this case, it's just 1 track, and again, use this neutral game ownership marker. When you resolve the fourth event, locate the first city with incomplete stations, apart from the Siliguri town. Take the neutral markers and complete all the remaining stations in that city. Then, take the cubes from the first, second and the third event and put them back into the bag. Now, when you resolve the 5th event, you have to pay 1 steel or 2 chai for each of your equipment cards. You need to pay steel from your personal reserve and you pay chai on the chai track, and you have to pay for each equipment card. Notice that the very reliable train is immune to this event. When you resolve the 6th event, first immediately resolve harvest and then perform the lay track event, exactly the same one as the 3rd event. Then, when you perform the event number 1 again, Perform the event normally and in addition, return the cubes from the 4th, 5th and 6th event back into the bag and then remove cubes from the stockyard. If the stockyard has more than 7 iron cubes, more than 4 stone cubes or more than 1 chai cube, remove all the excess cubes back into the supply bag. At the end of the game, count up all your victory points. Victory points are marked with this black number in a yellow square. So first, sum up the victory points for your tea estates, then all the completed stations, railway track spaces, but don't remove those ownership markers yet, you will need them for the contract cards. Each contract card has a condition for the endgame scoring. Some of them are easier to score, some of them are very difficult to score. When you start scoring these contract cards, move the ownership markers from the game board onto the contract cards which you want to score. So in this case I need one ownership marker from the railway track. I can take the ownership marker from the game board and place it on the contract card. This way, one ownership marker can only count on one card. If you are not able to fulfill the conditions, there is no penalty at all. Then score the victory points based on your position on the chai track, from the equipment card, and for the tea leaves in your personal supply. Each leaf counts as a half point. You can use the scoring pad for calculating all the points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. And that's how you play Alubari. If you would have any questions or comments, please put them into the comment sections below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If you like the show, please subscribe. My name is Branislav Berec, you've been watching Game in a Nutshell, and hope to see you next time.